Hello everybody, hope everyone's well. My name is Mauro, and in front of me I have Hamlet's To Be or Not to Be speech by William Shakespeare. Now, I won't be going too in depth on what this speech means, but rather giving a blueprint giving a blueprint to what the emotional and intellectual journey of the character is. This is a technique I discovered from Ben Crystal, and it is a wonderful, very meaty, juicy technique if you guys have trouble breaking down very complex speeches. So I'm going to walk you through To Be or Not to Be, and let's get started. Wonderful. All right, so first thing we do is we count how many lines of text there are. And there's 32 and a half lines of text, and that I don't count the last thought because it's completely different from the rest of the speech. So it's actually, so 32 and a half lines. Now we look at the thoughts. So a thought ends in a full stop, a question mark, or an exclamation point. So we're going to go into the whole speech now, and we're going to find the questions, the statements, and the exclamations. So let's go really quickly. One. So first one, just a consummation devoutly to be wished. That's two, because of the period. There's the rub, must give us pause. There's another thought. Bear bodkin. Who these fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life. The dread of something that we know not of. Resolution. Lose 1, 2, 3, 4, and lose the name of action. All right, so let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 thoughts. And notice how we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 of those thoughts out of the 6 are midline endings. And basically that's an indication when Hamlet, or when anyone in general, let's say, if they're, basically Hamlet is interrupting himself. So he's thinking about something, having one line of thought, and then halfway through he shifts in a different direction. It's a new line of thought. It's a sharp turn. So that gives you that indication. So yes, let's continue. So 6 thoughts. Now, so with the 6 thoughts, if Shakespeare wanted to write 6 thoughts and 6 lines of poetry for Hamlet, he could if he wanted to. But in this speech, Hamlet has 32 and a half lines. So what he's saying must be very complex. So what type of thoughts are there? So let's see. We have one. Let's see the questions. So 1, 2. 2 questions. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4 statements. And then 0 exclamation. And out of the 6 thoughts, only 1 line ends at the end of the line of poetry, at the end of the poetic line. The other 5 are midline. So like I said, it gives an indication that the character is changing their direction in their line of thought. So 5 midline endings and 1 full ending. Let's write that. 5 midline, 1 full. Beautiful. Now, wonderful. Okay, so also something I should have mentioned too, this is the first folio. And there's a reason why it's better to do a breakdown with the first folio, because for those of you who don't know, the first folio is basically the first edition of the plays, and it was put together 7 years after Shakespeare's death by 2 of his actors. And so this is the closest we can get to how they would have basically the edition is the closest we could have gotten to how Shakespeare would have intended it to be read, to be spoken. He wrote phonetically a lot. And also there's an indication too that the capitalized words in the speech indicate that there's a lot of weight, emotional weight to this, to the word, and that it's important for the character. So now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to circle all the capitalized words. I'm not circling the words on the left because that just shows that the speech is in poetry, it's in verse, but the more so the lines in the middle and in the ending. So, question, nobler, slings, arrows, fortune, arms, sea, heartache, natural, flesh, dream, calamity, whips, scorns, oppressors, contumely, love, laws, office, spurns, quietus, bodkin, fardels, country, born, traveler, puzzles, conscience, cowards, native, resolution, thought, currents, action. Now, back then, Shakespeare's actors back then, they had very, very little rehearsal time. So by capitalizing these very big words, these words that have weight to the character, it actually helps the actors memorize quicker and get a better feel for what the speech is. Another technique as well is saying the ends of the lines. So very quickly, if I were to say question, suffer, fortune, troubles, sleep, end, shocks, consummation, sleep, rub, come, coil, respect, life, time, contumely, delay, spurns, takes, make, bear, life, death, born, will, have, of, all, resolution, thought, moment, away, action. Right there, we already get a nice skeleton of what the speech is about. Alrighty, so after we circle the capitalized words, so yeah, I give you a speech of what it's about. Now, in this particular speech, Hamlet is contemplating suicide, but also, just from reading it over and over again, as well as the play, I'd like to think that he's also contemplating existence. This idea that is it worth living at all? So in a way, it's larger than suicide, but deep inside, it does contain some elements of suicide. So now let's break down what the character is feeling. So now we're going to get to the emotional journey of the character. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write some numbers here. I'm going to write 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And we're basically going to count the syllables all the way to the end. So let's see. So to be or not to be, that is the question. Now, some people might say it's 11, but because it is capitalized, I would argue it's question in the original pronunciation. So to be or not to be, that is the question. So I'm going to say 12. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer, 11. The slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, 11. But outrageous, back then, but it's not capitalized. So I'm going to say outrageous in the original pronunciation. So the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. It could be 11, it could be 12. So 11, 12 for outrageous. For now, let's just put 11 because it's not capitalized. Or to take arms against a sea of troubles, 11. And by opposing end them to die to sleep, 11. No more and by asleep to say we end, 10. The first line with 10 syllables. Okay, we'll come back to that. The heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks. It could be 10, but it's with a capital. So I could argue it's natural. Natural. So the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks. I'm going to argue 11, but it could be 10. So I'm going to write 10, 11, natural. Your director or everyone's, that's something you'll figure out amongst yourselves. You get to decide what your director says and what your text coach says. So We'll come back. Wonderful. That flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation. 11. It's not capitalized, so I'm going to argue it's 11. Devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep. 10. To sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. To sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. That's 10. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come. 10. When we have shuffled off this mortal coil. 10. Must give us pause, there's the respect. 8. That makes calamity of so long life. That makes calamity of so long life. That's 10. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time? 10. The oppressors wrong the poor man's contumely. The oppressors wrong the poor man's contumely. 11. The pangs of despised love, the law's delay. 10. The insolence of office and the spurns. 10. That patient merit of the unworthy takes. Okay, 1 second. That patient merit of the unworthy takes. Now, this one's tricky actually, because patient would be patient in the original pronunciation, and of the unworthy. There could be an elision here. Instead of the unworthy, of the unworthy takes. That patient merit of the unworthy takes. That patient merit of the unworthy takes. That patient merit of the unworthy takes. It's not capitalized here. That patient merit of the unworthy takes. You know what? It looks, because with the elision, I'm going to argue it's 10. We'll come back to that. I'm going to write patient. Could be 10 or 11. Because it's not capitalized, but, you know, that's, like I said, that's another, these are just possibilities. That's something you can talk with your director or your text coach. When he himself might his quietus make. 10. With bare bodkin, who would these fardels bear? 11. To grunt and sweat under a weary life. 10. But that the dread of something after death. 10. The undiscovered country from whose born. 10. No traveler returns, puzzles the will. 10. And makes us rather bear those ills we have. 10. Than fly to others that we know not of. 10. It's the first thought ending at the end of the poetic line. So Hamlet finally gets it across and not halfway through. That's the only line, I think. The only thought that ends all the way. Yeah, it's the only one. Where are we? Thus, conscience does make cowards of us all. Now, conscience is with a capital C, so again, I would argue it's conscience. So thus conscience does make. Now, cowards, in the original pronunciation dictionary, there are two options to say it. So it's cowards or cords. Because really digging into the book, and I'm gonna say it's cords, because then it's a perfect line of it's perfect 10 syllables. So thus conscience does make cords of us all. I know it sounds a little bit weird, but that's actually how they pronounced it. Cowards or cords. But I'm going to say it's cords. Thus conscience does make cords of us all. It's 10. And thus the native hue of resolution. 12. Because it's capitalized. Resolution. No. But obviously resolution. You can hear it slightly, but you know, it's important. This is why you got to count your syllables to see where it's off. I'll explain that in a second. Is sicklied or with the pale cast of thought. Is sicklied or with the pale cast of thought. That's 10. And enterprises of great pith and moment. 11. With this regard, their currents turn away. 10. And lose the name of action. And lose the name of action. There we go, because it's capitalized. 8. Boom. All right. So next. So how does Hamlet feel now at this point? And what is he experiencing? So here's what we're going to do now. What we're going to do is we're going to connect the dots. 12, 11, all the way down. Boom, 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 boom. Oop, it goes up here, down there, up here, down there. Alrighty. So here's what we're gonna do now. I'm gonna take the tape off here. Actually, I'm just gonna move it. Let me see. I'm gonna gently remove the tape. Now what I'm gonna do now is actually turn it sideways, just like this. And then you actually see the character's heartbeat. Like an ECG to measure the beats of the heart. And the idea is that when a character is speaking in 10 syllables, he's under control, he's calm, the thought is clear and concise. But when it's more than 10 syllables, whether it be 11 or 12, the thoughts are picking up, his heart's racing, the thought is so big that it breaks the poetic form. Right? So if you could see here, it starts at 12. Beep, 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 beep. And then he drops. Goes up again. Beep, 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 beep. Right? So let's actually look through just a couple lines here. Or a few. Let's just go through the whole speech really quickly. So for example, to be or not to be, that is the question. It starts at 12. Now, it would make sense for the line to start at 10 syllables because the first thought is enormous. To be or not to be, to die or not to die, that is the question. You know? So it would make sense that, you know, a thought like that could not come from a place of being calm or calmness. So that's one example right there. So it starts right off the top. Whether 'tis noble in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die to sleep. No more, and by a sleep to say we end. It's the first line in 10 syllables. So that's when he's a little bit more collected and calm and clear. Then it picks up again. By sleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. I think even the line too has a bit of just the imagery, the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks. You know, it is racing. And I mean, for me personally, when I read it, it does have urgency. So it only makes sense that it's 11 syllables. That flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep perchance to dream. Here he's calm and collected, all the thoughts are clear. And then we drop our first thought when it goes to 8 syllables. Must give us pause, there's the respect. Now, here's a clue. Now, everything in Shakespeare is stitched, everything you need to know about Shakespeare and their characters and their stage directions is all written in the text. It's all stitched in the text. So what we're going to do, so let's see. So must give us pause. There's the respect. So taking the literal word pause, it could be an indication for the actor to pause, take a moment, take a beat. There's the respect, which makes sense. Must give us pause. Be dumb. There's the respect. It could be a moment, it could be a beat, right? Shakespeare giving an indication that, to literally pause when saying the word, right? So first one in 8 syllables. Let's continue. That makes calamity of so long life, or who would bear the whips and scorns of time? Here it picks up again, 11 syllables. The oppressor's wrong, the poor man's contumely. Who's the oppressor in Hamlet's life? Who is it? Claudius. It's Claudius. And he's under control again. The pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, the spurns. Who would these fardels bear? It picks up again. Here he's all calm and collected. And this is the only thought where he actually goes right through to the end of the poetic line in the whole speech. So that just gives you an indication with all the other thoughts here, how complex and how quickly he's shifting from one thought to the next. He shifts mid-line because he's interrupting himself. But it's not until this thought right here makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. He's fighting to the end of the line, the end of the thought. And then here he goes again. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, or cords in the original pronunciation. And thus the native view of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pith and moment. He's picking up again. He's going back to 10. So this is the idea that it's the emotional arc, the emotional journey, the emotional intellectual journey of the character. But yeah, that's very important because, back then too with Shakespeare, he was so brilliant because as human beings, we are inconsistent. We are very, very inconsistent. And what's unique about being inconsistent is that it's real. When the heart's racing, we're not always speaking in iambic pentameter. Sometimes, when we get excited, our heart races, and therefore the words pick up even more. Our thoughts kind of break the poetic form because the characters are getting excited, or it's important to them. It's a pulse. It's a beat that just escalates really quick. So very, very. Yeah, so be very careful when it comes to breaking it down. And like I said, this is a great technique for any Shakespeare lover, and I highly recommend it to actors. Like I said, I've learned it from Ben Crystal. Check him out. He's an incredible Shakespeare actor, scholar, producer, and he's incredible. And I'm definitely going to be using this for all my other monologue works. So this is how you break down a Shakespeare speech. Give it a shot. Give it a shot. Enjoy.